Today, like I promised many of you in previous videos, I have a guest amazing developer.
Hi, I'm Sam Rockwell, a principal software engineer and design systems architect with over 13 years of experience.
And together today, we're going to guide you through a complete process of getting started from GitHub with a project starter that Sam has created for us to use Claude Desktop to run this project that leverages Material UI design components. We're going to work on creating a pricing page feature that leverages our exact components. We will push that back to code as a pull request, and Sam, being the developer on the other end, will approve it and merge it into our code. So we want to walk you through a whole process where, as a designer, you assume this new role of a design engineer. You work with your actual production code using design system components to create new pages and features for your product. If you're ready to explore this, let's dive in. So for those of you who've been following my channel for a while, I'm very honored today to bring Sam to a common video. This has been challenging for us to create. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're passionate to be talking to designers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sam Rockwell. I'm a principal software engineer and design systems architect. I've been building an AI native mobile design system from scratch. If you want to check it out, you can view my Substack at samrockwell.substack.com. I really began this journey of design systems and design systems engineering several years ago. I ended up on a design systems team. I had no idea what design systems were. I had an idea that it had to do with building components, but what it ended up being is this amazing collaboration between design and engineering, where you're building the systems that enable designers in their everyday work. So it's been a joy, honestly. I've loved this niche, this role.
And it's been amazing to work with you, Sam, and learn so much. Like the different things we're discovering, especially in this critical era where AI is just revolutionizing the way we're working. It's been incredible to have a dev partner where we can think together. I explain things on the design side inside the Figma file, and you're helping me understand so many things on the engineering side, that things that I forgot because I haven't used for years. And before we get started and start showing you this demo, how we're going to work with a design system, so you actually use Claude to generate screens respecting your design system, what I want you to know is that Sam has created a starter file that is incredibly helpful. And you will see a link to it inside the description. There's a link to the GitHub where you can go there, clone the file, and follow along the steps that we're doing here.
Here we have MUI wrapper. This is just a basic repository. What it's going to render is just a set of components inside of Storybook. So if we look over here, this is actually the default site that we get from this starter kit. And I've also added Storybook that allows us to view each of our components as well. So we can browse each of these. Now, this repository, MUI wrapper, it consists of a couple of technologies. It uses Material UI. That's a basic design system. The reason that I've chosen this particular design system is because of how easy it is to actually use with Figma. So there is a Figma library for it.
And Sam, if I can ask you to clarify, because many designers will be very enamored with all these names. Like, what's the difference between GitHub and Storybook? And do we actually need both? So, can you explain the distinction of what is GitHub for a developer and also what is Storybook? And why would we still need both in a scenario like what we're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So GitHub is just where your code lives. It's just the place where all of our source code exists. It also provides a lot of workflows that are helpful for collaboration. In terms of Storybook, I prefer Storybook for working with components and iterating on them because it just provides me with a clean harness to be able to play with different properties of these components and see how they actually render.
Okay, that's amazing. So it gives us a visual view of the code. Is that correct?
Yeah, so let me show you actually how I built this. It's pretty straightforward. So I just created a number of pull requests. I started with an absolutely blank repository. And each of these tools, whenever you go on, say, a Vite Get Started, or any of these tools, Material UI Get Started, anything like that, one of the first things that you'll see is some of these commands. So you'll see something that looks like this in this code block. And what we want to do here is actually run this command. This uses something called a task runner, but it basically takes your blank repository and it starts adding to that repository. And there are a number of tools here that you see that I've added. So I've added Vite. Vite is just a framework for React. Plus, we have Material UI. Material UI allows us to access a number of off the shelf components. We also have Storybook, which I just showed as the harness for actually playing around with these components, testing out their properties. And then I also have one more pull request where I focus on just the AI architecture, making sure that any agent that is sent to actually look at this repository is going to be capable of reading through it, taking the right steps that it needs to be able to install everything.
And you shared this repo with me as the designer, right? So we're role playing here in this tutorial where Sam is the developer I actually work with and I'm the designer. So he set up the repo for us as our developers so we can start working. And this is the kind of collaboration I want to invite you to do with your developers, because to work, especially on your production code, you need that proper safe space with the necessary guardrails so that whatever work you do, you can push it back to the right place. So, Sam, can you show how you shared that with me? And then you can guide me to actually take the necessary steps to start designing.
Absolutely. So we've already looked at code. To add someone to our project, we simply go over to settings, we go to collaborators, and then we can just add people. If we're part of an organization, some of these names should show up pretty easily. But if we're working with people outside of our organization, we can still add them.
Let's go and see what's happening on my side, because we can see you've added me and I still need to approve this invite. So here we are inside my GitHub. And if I come and click on the notifications, this is where I notice that I have an invitation from Sam.
There might be one more step on my side, but go ahead and accept that invitation.
Now, our next step is we want to clone this code on my local environment so I can work with it. Is that true?
That's right. Let's see if we can get the basic starter site working and also get the storybook working.
For the purpose of the designers who are following along with us, we are going to be using Claude Code today. Of course, you can use any LLM, you can use Codex. So many of you on my channel use Codex as well, so feel free to follow the same steps. And if you have any questions, you can always ask us in the comments. So let's start by cloning this particular repository to our local documents, and then we can connect it with Claude. If you click on the drop down for code, this is where you see you have access to the HTTPS, SSH, Github CLI.
So what I always do, there's really two ways that we can do it. We can either prompt Claude to do it for us, or we can go through the Git commands ourselves. If we have Git installed on our machines, we can run the Git commands ourselves. In the old days, before AI, what I would do is just click on the little copy icon there all the way to the right. And then I just run a command in the terminal, git clone, and then I just paste that URL. And that will actually clone, it'll create a new folder called MUI wrapper in this case, because that's the name of our repository. And then it will copy the contents of this repository into that folder.
Should we try doing this with Claude to simplify it for our designers? I'm trying to keep them out of the terminal.
Absolutely. Let's give Claude a go.
Clone this repository. And maybe what I would do here is I would change the folder where I want to place it. So I'm going to place it in my desktop main folder or on my documents. And I will click open Trust Workspace, and I will give it the link for the repository that we just copied.
And you certainly can put this in documents. A typical developer convention is we create a folder at root called dev.
Okay. Awesome. Let's do that. Let's do it the correct way. I love that you're correcting me so we can do this better. So I would go to my users.
Yeah, so you're at root right now. So you can actually just click on new folder and then just create capital D for dev.
Okay. And hit create and opening this. So whatever we clone will come inside this dev environment. Clone the repository into your working directory. Allow Claude to run. Yes, we want to allow it. I want to always allow, so we save on all the auto approvals that are happening.
Yeah, and actually one helpful tip, if you see all the way at the bottom left, just underneath that text box, we see accept edits. We can actually change that to something like auto mode.
Auto mode.
We'll ensure that we don't have to explicitly prove every single request.
And we can see here we're using Sonnet 5, it's high. Fable is back, but we're not to use that just yet. The clone is successful. Okay, so now what is the next step?
Let's try run Storybook in this repository.
So it's recognizing there is a Storybook script. It's installing the dependencies.
And if you caught that, it said reading about.md. That's a file that I actually created to help the agent navigate the code base. Sometimes, especially with legacy code bases that aren't built for AI. So what this is doing right now is it's actually installing all the dependencies. And it's a little tricky because it's using something called PMPM. PMPM both manages our dependencies for us. It also runs scripts for us. So it's what's called a task runner. But what's tricky is that PNPM has its own version as well. So we need another tool that manages the installation and the versioning of that specific tool, kind of like a meta package manager. For that, we use ASDF, but I didn't actually make that explicit in the about.md. So Claude is trying some other means of installing PNPM, and it looks like it worked.
Okay, that's great. So don't worry if all of that went over your head. It's totally normal. That's the best news about this, that AI can fill in the gaps that we're not necessarily familiar with. So it's running our storybooks. And if I click on button, I can see it. I can see the checkbox. I can see all the material UI components that Sam, you already added to the repository. So now that we have Storybook running, let's continue making sure that things are running as they should before we go into our first test. So let's say start the website. Let's see what comes from this.
And to clear up any confusion too, you notice that if you recall earlier when I was sharing my screen, there's Storybook, but the way that Storybook is set up is a little bit different than the starter site. So it's kind of two separate things. There's the starter site that V generates for us automatically, and then there's Storybook, which allows us to view our components. There's really good reasons why we have those separate, but for now, we just need to think about them as separate entities.
It took a second, but it figured it out. And let's see if it will give me a place where we can actually open this. Will it open it in our browser, Sam? Because right now it's in the preview.
Yeah, so what it's doing right now is it created a dev server. That means that it's like simulating what the website would be like, but on your local machine only. You can see it's pointing at localhost 5173. You can either copy this or you can just open up your browser of choice. You can paste it in. You can literally type localhost colon 5173 and then just hit enter and you'll see the exact same thing.
And again, this is the value of the starter file that we had. You've already installed those dependencies, the server, all that. So all Claude had to do is actually read it and run it. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We get this for free whenever we run the PMPM create with Feet. That's actually, this whole page is something that it generates for us.
So now let's do a small test that's actually relevant for designers. I'm going to close the preview here. We know that everything is running well because we have our storybook. But what is really relevant for designers and what we're trying to do here is, let's say I worked with my developers. They're giving me this kind of setup where I can work with our design system. And here, Material UI is our example. As a designer, I want to design a new feature, but I want to build it on our existing code with our design system. So for example, I will say, research pricing pages, use Stripe as an example, and create a pricing page for a small business using the Atom components from our library. And can you explain why you guided me like to use the words Atom components from our library?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you actually look back at the code itself in GitHub, if you still have that link open, you'll actually see that we have a bit of design going into the components themselves. So we'll click on that source folder, and then inside of here, we have components slash atoms. So this is a reference to atomic design. It's kind of like an onion model, a way of organizing your components where you start with atoms that are basically just wrappers around your core design system. In this case, these are just importing Material UI components and just basically returning the Material UI components. There's nothing being done currently, but it provides us the opportunity to be able to edit them later. What we'll want to do as we expand, as we identify which components we want to create, we'll start fleshing out what are called molecules. We start to combine these different compositions of atoms themselves to create the components that we actually need.
Okay, and after some time, you can see that Claude did the research, it created all this. It's saying that it did things correctly. So, Sam, should I tell it to run it because we don't see it live yet?
Yeah, let's see if it actually replaced the website with what it just did here. Oh, you know what? It might be running in your browser already.
There you go. It's actually running on the local host. So it replaced the MUI wrapper page with this page, which is a pricing page, just like we asked it to. Now, Sam, how do we verify that this is using our material components? Because this looks good. It is a pricing page. It is what I asked it. I didn't specify more. So design-wise, this passes my test. But now we want to see if it's actually using components.
Well, there's really two ways to verify. We can look at the components themselves. If you click on that button, so that button has those really tight borders. You'll notice that there's that typical Material UI animation when you actually click on the button itself. So that's definitely using Material UI. But what we always want to do, of course, is also check the code.
So if I right click and go to my developer tools with inspect, this would open the code side, which would allow us to select the elements themselves.
So actually, because we're using a framework, it's going to give us something that looks a little bit different. I can see already, though, at the top of your screen, it says button.mui button base. That's a really good indication that it is, in fact, using that Material UI button. But you know what? Don't worry too much about this. It's looking really good. So maybe let's just open a PR and I can take a look and let you know if you're using those components properly.
Okay, that's amazing. Our first PR, guys. There is a button to create a pull request. So that's what I would want to do. I clicked on create a pull request. And Sam, can you simplify the word pull request? Because it doesn't make any sense to me as a designer. Why is it called a pull request when what I'm actually doing is I created something, now I'm sending it to you? Why is it called a pull request?
Yeah, it's a little interesting. I never think too hard about pull requests. Some teams actually call it a merge request, but it seems like the industry has really settled around using pull request more often. Really, all it's trying to do is take your code versus the code that we actually cloned, and it's opening up what's called the pull request, basically a diff of all the files that you changed. This just makes it easy for
Pausing you here because diff, just to clarify to designers, is a differentiation, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the difference between your code versus the code that we cloned originally. Let's just say PR against MUI wrapper.
So it's basically asking where to push it, and that's what we want.
Exactly.
The beauty here, guys, is we didn't have to go to the terminal. Creating a pull request is right here available in Claude Desktop. Our folder, our setup is local. Our website is live right here on our local host. And I guess what I want to do next, Sam, is once this is confirmed, I would love to see how things look on your side. Once I've sent things to my developer, please show us what would happen on your side. How would you verify? And what would you do if we're ready to merge into production? Yay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to show you.
So, Sam, what is this instruction we're seeing from Claude?
Yeah, so Claude is telling us that we don't have the Github CLI. So, in order to actually be able to run some of these commands, we might need some of the more advanced features from GitHub CLI itself. There's a couple things we can do, but the first step is just making sure that we have the GitHub CLI installed on our machine.
That's probably the case for a lot of the designers who are following. So, should we do this? Try installing GitHub, which is the second option Claude is giving us?
Yeah, that's really convenient, actually. Let's go ahead and give that a try.
So, we can see here that it actually downloaded GitHub. It's saying that it just needs to authenticate. So, I'm thinking I should go with option one, or is option three giving me the link?
It looks like it can actually do that for you, that second option, give me a token to use. So we could try that if we want to stay far away from the terminal.
So after downloading GitHub, one authentication step was still missing, and we could easily do that through the terminal, but we're trying to guide you guys here without even having to open the terminal. So I asked Claude to help me authenticate GitHub, and because of that, it gave me this link. So clicking on this link, it brings me here, and this is allowing me to authorize this device to actually let Claude push a PR or a commit on my behalf. So I'm getting this code that it gave me and pasting it here, clicking continue. Yes, and I'm just authorizing GitHub. And then it says, congratulations, you're all set. Okay, let's test this. Going back to Claude, you can see I didn't need to click anything. It actually verified my GitHub authentication. And now it's trying to create the PR once again. to send it to Sam.
Yeah, looks like it gave you a link to that pull request. You can actually click on that.
So we created a pull request and here it is. We can click on it. We see the summary. It already did that on our behalf. And now, Sam, I want to stop and see what's happening on your side and how you verify things before you merge them.
So on my side, when I refresh this movie wrapper repository, I see something new here. I see pull request 1. And if I take a look, what I'll actually do at this point is I will ask Claude to verify these changes and I'll actually look at the files changed. I just want to make sure that this is consistent with all of the coding best practices, guidelines, things like that that I've set up in this repository. I can see that it's actually successfully using the components atoms, which is what we asked it to do. So that's a really good sign. I'll also look at the imports over here and I see that it's importing our pricing page. I had mentioned before, we wanted to verify if we were actually using the material UI components based on the prompt that we had given it. And the first thing I do is look at imports to see what are the actual source of the components that we're using. So I see that this pricing page component is successfully importing from the component atoms, just like we would expect. And if I look at what the component itself is actually rendering, I can see that it's rendering our components faithfully. Now, there are some other components like div, things like that. That's what I would expect at this point. I see that the file organization is a little bit different than I would like, so I left a comment. Now, we can use Claude to actually respond to and handle this comment for us. But for right now, I think this actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to select approve and I'm going to submit my review. And now we can see the pull request is ready to be merged back to main.
That's great. So when you click merge, does that send this code back to the main branch?
Yeah, absolutely. So all I have to do from here is click on that merge button, click confirm merge, and this will actually move things over to main. Now, if you're working with a really big repository, there might be more steps than this. This is the most straightforward example. We go ahead and click code. And now if I actually click on source and components, I can see that our pricing page component is now back in the code base. So that merge was successful.
And like you said, of course, there's so many changes to the organization and even the file, and this is just the demo. There's so many more things that we would love to share with the designers who are watching this, starting even with the correct way of doing this. Because most likely, if I'm designing, I would start by creating a branch myself, right? Not just sending code randomly to you. But we wanted to show you how this works as a starter. We want to see if this is something you want to learn more about. And we would definitely create a series of more steps that would benefit you and help you. But testing this with you, so your comments and your feedback is very essential at this stage for what we create next. We hope you found this tutorial useful. We know it's a getting started, but we're hoping it will bring a lot of questions from your side on things that you want to do that you can ask us. Sam, any closing thoughts from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my tip for you as designers is don't be afraid to reach out to your developers. The role of being an engineer is changing. So, it really is becoming engineers' responsibility to ensure that you have the same access to the repository, that you can actually take action and play around with these tools just the same as they can.
This is amazing to hear, Sam, because I can definitely see this. A lot of designers hesitate to reach out to developers because they don't know what is the reaction that they will get. So, working with you regularly, definitely, I highly recommend the same. Like, this collaboration is essential because the lines are becoming very blurry. Designers are not just working in a separate canvas anymore, and developers are not the only ones who are dealing with code. So it's very important that we work together.
Thank you so much for watching. Let us know if you have any comments.
Let us know any questions that you have or things that you want to learn more about, and we will create more deep dives like this.